On April 1st, 2014, two students from Netherlands named Lysane Froon and Chris Kremers went on a hike in Panama with a dog. The dog came back, but the young woman didn't. A search eventually turned up a severed foot and scattered remains, but authorities had trouble determining how the hikers had died. Years later, some people still believe someone killed the pair. Froon and Kremers were both in their early 20s. They traveled to Panama to work with their children. Many hikers from all over the world disappear, fall, or suffer other fatal accidents while traveling. This could have happened to these women as well, but there are a few holes in this particular theory. For one, the girl's camera had photos on it from hours after they have stopped dialing emergency services. Also, a serial killer might have stalked their area at the time. The world may never know what happened to the pair, but speculation still runs wild. On March 14, 2014, students Lysane Froon and Chris Kremers traveled from the Netherlands to Panama, where they intended to assist local communities, volunteer with children, learn Spanish, and relax a bit. However, a miscommunication led to them arriving in Bucute too early for their program, which Kremers noted in her diary was rude and not at all friendly. Tomorrow they will try and get a hold of the head teacher. This was a real disappointment. The entry continued. The date read April 1st, the day of their fateful hike. The woman wanted to see as much of Bucute as possible, hiring a guide to show them around April 2, 2014, the day before the guided tour. However, they decided to explore the area surrounding the active Barrio volcano towards the continental divide. According to a geographical expert, the 3-mile stretch is relatively easy to explore. The most missing tourists return without assistance or come across search parties looking for them. Kremers and Froon set out into the forest along the Pianista Trail around 11 a.m. on April 1st, with only a backpack between them. Blue, a dog known throughout the community, reportedly followed them along the trail. It was the last time anyone saw the woman alive. Other than the dog, the young woman went on their hike alone, only asking for directions from a local innkeeper who advised them to take a taxi back to town. People began to suspect something happened when the dog Blue returned from the hike unaccompanied. When neither Froon nor Kremers turned up, the community decided to wait until the next day to contact authorities. Meanwhile, on April 2nd, the pair missed their appointment with their hired tour guide. The families of both Froon and Kremers also became concerned when they didn't get a usual check-in call. On April 3rd, authorities began an aerial search of the forest and an on-foot search of Bucute. In the days following the students' disappearances, authorities conducted foot and aerial searches. By April 6th, the parents of both women grew frantic and flew to Panama with detectives from the Netherlands. Once there, the families and detectives began a massive search. For a time, many suspected Froon and Kremers never got lost on the mountain, but were instead victims of a crime in town. This later proved false. The search effort moved into the forests, where the young woman traversed using on-foot search teams and dog units. Teams investigated for 10 days. Their hunt scaled down on April 14th, though continued on for 10 more weeks. A woman from the local Ngave tribe turned in a blue backpack she claimed she found along the bank of a nearby river. The backpack contained sunglasses, a camera, 2 cell phones, money, Froon's passport, and a water bottle. After finding the woman's phones, authorities now had a lead. Once they examined the phones, investigators unraveled a confusing and grim timeline. The phones remained active for nearly 10 days after the pair went missing. During this time, Kremers and Froon repeatedly called for help. They called 112 and the emergency number for the Netherlands, as well as Panama's emergency number 911. They made numerous emergency calls a few hours into their hike. Logs show they managed to connect only once due to poor reception in the forest. This connected call was stable for roughly 2 seconds. After the attempted calls, the phones stayed on for some time. Kramer's locked phone showed someone entered a wrong pin several times. Accordingly, Kramer's phone was powered on one last time on April 11th. Both phones went dead afterwards. Given the timeline, authorities assumed at least one of the women was alive at the time, 5 days into the search. The girl's camera showed evidence of what may have happened. More than 100 pictures were on the camera. The first few looked like normal tourist photos, with the women smiling together. However, the tone of the picture began to change. One showed Kremers with what looked like concern on her face, dated around the time of the emergency calls. After this, the photos were from April 8 and likely snapped between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. These were of seemingly random objects like a stick with a plastic sticking to it, as well as scenes of foliage, canyons, and a bridge. Experts proposed several theories about how and why the woman took these photos. The arbitrary picture looked focused as if steady hands took the shots, suggesting they were intentional. Perhaps the photos served as trail markers to help the young woman find their way around or back to the rescuers. Because of the dark, the pair might have used the camera flash as a light source, or to scare away animals. Others suggested neither Froon nor Kremers took these photos. They believe someone abducted the woman. Froon's parents requested authorities refrain from releasing all the photos from the camera to the public. Allegedly, some pictures depicted Kremers and Froon in a rough state. During a Panama-based TV program's broadcast, the newscasters accidentally leaked some photos. This program happened again on a Dutch TV program. The second show featured a photo focusing on the back of a person's head, suspected to be Kremers. The image appears to show an injury on Kremers' head, with blood on her hair. This led to speculation about how Kremers suffered an injury during the hike, and Froon perhaps used the camera for light, or to document Kremers' last known whereabouts before seeking help. If harm came to Kremers, the photos could have intended to help rescuers determine her location based on visual markers. After the discovery of the backpack, the search for the young woman began again. This time in a different area, authorities investigated along the Rio Culebra, also known as the Serpent River, near the village of Alto Romero. This was far from the trail Kremers and Froon originally set out for, meaning they either got lost or changed their itinerary. This time the search turned up something: Kremers' clothing, neatly folded and arranged on the river's edge. The shorts appeared zipped and folded, placed above the waterline about a half-mile upstream from where the local tribal woman allegedly founded the backpack. Curiously, the garment showed up on the opposite side of the river from where the woman took all their photos. 2 months after discovering Kremers' clothing, further searches finally turned up human remains. Searchers found a shoe behind a tree along the river where the backpack reportedly appeared. It contained a sock and intact human foot and ankle bones, with enough flesh for DNA testing. By the end of August 2014, DNA tests linked to the foot. It was found that the foot belonged to Froon. Investigators later uncovered more bones and bits of skin, numbering up to 33 skeletal fragments. They also found bits of Kremers' skin in the jungle. while the young women were evidently dead. None of the evidence explained how they died. The bodies were in pieces, likely scattered by the river over time. Much was lost. No marks on the bones indicated damage, and some of the bones appeared bleached. The only suggestion of injury was remnants of bones from Froon's foot, though a broken foot wouldn't have killed her. Though they found the woman, authorities did not know how their deaths occurred. Authorities faced the struggle of trying to determine why and how the woman had died. They began looking for persons of interest. They tried to figure out if the woman had any company besides the dog. The innkeeper they spoke to said Froon and Kremers were alone and had asked for directions before the hike. At this point, no one was with them. However, police learned later from a Facebook post the pair met with some people before their trip. In the post, Froon and Kremers said they shared brunch with two Dutchmen on the last day anyone saw the woman. However, no reports cropped up about these two men. By March of 2015, almost a year after Kremers and Froon traveled to Panama, investigators at last reached their conclusion. Their research into the case suggested the woman most likely suffered some sort of accident along the trail, but became lost in the forest. Froon had supposedly fallen a great distance and either died in or near the river. Her foot would support this theory. Experts said the break in the ankle and foot could only occur from a fall from a great height. The taken photos showed the date of when the woman tried contacting emergency services, likely after Kremers suffered her injury, but in the dark they couldn't find their way back. Froon died trying to exit the forest, leaving Kremers dead or dying. The remains then decomposed thanks to the river and rain and ended up scattering miles away. There was finally a resolution to the mystery and the case could rest. Still, some people weren't so sure. Many claimed the Panamanian authorities botched their handling of the case. Writer for the Panama paper, La Estrella de la Courier, said the whole thing was a mess. She reported there was no chain of custody established for the recovered evidence or remains. She said 30 prints found on the backpack not only remained unidentified, but none of the indigenous peoples involved with the case had their prints recorded. She voiced further concern over the investigation of the electronics, saying the condition of the equipment found was inconsistent with the place where it turned up. The lack of damage to the equipment was suspicious, but the police didn't investigate this matter, and also failed to scrutinize a photo deleted off the camera. Lawyer Enrique Arocha, who works for the Kremers family, voiced concern about the handling of evidence. He claimed that there wasn't a forensic investigation conducted at the crime scene, and the evidence and its sources remained unverified. Furthermore, still lost are the woman's skull and other major bones, which may reveal a more definitive cause of death. Because of this evidence mishandling, conspiracy theories and suggestions of cover-ups by the police and government gained steam. Some believe the indigenous people of the area may have killed the pair and eaten them, and are now hiding the crime by turning over evidence and seeming to cooperate. Others suggested the deaths are possibly the work of the cartels or organ traffickers, which would explain why the bodies were in pieces. While there are plentiful theories about what truly happened, one common theme revolves around the government and authorities in Panama intentionally keeping quiet. Why would they do this? Some experts and others involved in the case say it was all done in the name of tourism, which brings a lot of revenue to Panama. The idea of Panama as dangerous is potentially harmful to tourism, so it's more convenient to conclude these women died from an accident. In 2017, journalist Adela Coyette expressed the same opinion to the Daily Beast. It's a sad fact, but serious investigation was never done. Everything had to be hushed up to protect tourism. I want tourists to come to Panama, but the government must still do its job. The victims deserve justice and the families deserve to know what really happened. Did someone kill Froon and Kremers? Between 2009 and 2017, over 24 other tourists have gone missing in this area or turned up dead. A revisiting of the case in 2017 brought up enough evidence to suggest these disappearances, including those of Froon and Kremers, may have links to a serial killer. Leaked law enforcement reports suggested someone dismembered the young woman and scattered their remains deliberately, which might have happened to others as well. Previously, authorities said the river and scavengers scattered the remains, but the Chiric State Judicial report indicated otherwise. The report said after an 18-month investigation, the evidence pointed to homicide. Pair this with abundant unanswered questions, such as why the two young women ended up so far from the main trail, and some will start thinking it was a slaying. Internet groups continue to research the disappearances, though authorities can reopen the case anytime, given how many years have passed. No one can unequivocally explain what happened to Froon and Kremers in the forests of Panama.